Good morning. This is Psychology at Work on Resource Center. My name is Audrey Raj, and with me on the show, as always, is the ever effervescent organizational psychologist and CEO of OPsych, Hetal Doshi. How are you doing this morning, Hetal?
I'm really good. Thank you, Audrey. How are you?
I am good too. Now, on the show today, Hetal, we're going to be talking about bullying leaders in the workplace, and to a certain extent, we're going to be talking about bullying leaders at large. Now, why was it important to discuss bullying at this point in time, Hetal?
Yeah, I think you could see, all over the news without wanting to, we want to stay away from politics as much as possible. I know it's a radio station, but you can't help but to, when you log on to the news, definitely there's something massive that's going on in the world today that has this experience or perception of one bullying another. And although there's one massive story that we are all experiencing about bullying, we see this like a buffet, right? Like anywhere and everywhere. The moment there is this opportunity for power, there is this natural need or inclination for human beings to kind of take that opportunity to see how better we can position ourselves in this hierarchy of society. And one of those easy options to climb up the ladder would be this mechanism or this tool or this technique of bullying. And so I thought it'd be quite valuable to talk about what bullying really is about, what constitutes it, and how you can kind of escape an experience of bullying.
Right. Okay, so let's just start with what makes a bully and why they do what they do.
Right. So typically bullying is basically a dysfunctional and a destructive goal-directed behavior that harms another person. Typically, it would also be some kind of a psychological power imbalance to a point where the person on the receiving end experiences a feeling of being helpless. So typically a bully would be somebody who has an apparent lack of concern for the well-being of others. So there's a sense of apathy, not empathy, yeah? Also, it is a technique that negatively affects the climate in which it operates. So almost everybody, the bully, the perpetrator, who's the bully, the victim, who is the one who experiences it, as well as the people around them actually get impacted in the exact same way that the person who is bullied experiences the bullying experience as well. So, to anyone who is bullying, to anyone who is experiencing other people getting bullying, the impact on you would be the same as the one who gets bullied. That's crazy, right?
Yeah.
Because energy transfers. Energy cannot be created or destroyed. It just transfers, and everybody who experiences it probably feels that level of experience as well. And the third characteristic of a bully as well is that they tend to spin the truth in order to justify their actions as if they are doing it for the greater good, as opposed to honestly claiming that it is out of their own self-interest to increase their own personal power. So what becomes very interesting over here is that human beings, can be great storytellers. And so how a story is spun can eventually lead to an experience where we end up saying, yeah, maybe that person deserved to be bullied.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And vice versa. Yeah. So that's basically what bullying means and what
right. But why do bullies do this? Like we've just heard how it can impact them as well. But why do some leaders still intimidate or manipulate or even use fear to get what they ultimately want?
Yeah, I think it's really a very brilliant, deep, thoughtful process to actually begin to uncover the reasons behind it. Yeah, because the only way to be able to stop these kind of experiences is to actually deeply understand it. So, story behind behavior. When you actually observe the bully, there are so many deep-rooted issues that make them behave in this dysfunctional way. One of it would be a perceived threat, right? Like, so you are put in a position where you feel that it's a hostile environment, you are threatened, and so it brings out the worst in you, even if you may never have wanted to be that person, or you never had a past experience of being bullied, but that particular experience pushes you so far back into a corner that is the only thing that you know, based on what you've experienced, the only thing that you know that will help you get out of the situation. The second reason why people would utilize bullying as a technique to survive or to thrive even would be their own past or current toxic environments. So it is very likely that a bully has been bullied before. It is very, very likely that they would have a history of family abuse or abandonment, And in fact, those who, according to the research, those who have experienced bullying are twice as likely to bully others as a future defense mechanism. And it is this vicious cycle of negative behaviors that keeps on perpetrating itself. It could also be that they think that this is the norm based on the environment, that this is normal behavior.
Acceptable.
Yeah, that there is absolutely nothing wrong in raising your voice and putting somebody down, in using even this technique as a way to say, "Oh, I'm trying to bring out the best in you. That's why I'm doing this out of love," because these are things that you may have heard in your own environment. And I mean, Audrey, I'm not sure about you, but even I could relate to having heard these kind of statements in my life, not necessarily from my parents, but hearing it from friends' parents saying, I beat you because I love you,
Yeah.
I'm yelling at you because I love you, I'm locking you up in the bathroom. So these are things that it's not something that you have to watch a movie for. I think it happens pretty much everywhere. The other thing would be a desire for power as well. So human beings typically, we tend to want to climb up this social hierarchy of sorts. So the moment there is this opportunity for us, I'm not saying everybody does it, but bullies think that they are virtuous, right? And an aversive control of the victim is justified as a way of them being able to climb up a certain ladder. And climbing up a certain ladder means then that this is the social good that they're doing for everybody. So this theory is called social dominance theory. Social dominance theory also has this idea that people who tend to have high social dominance orientation, meaning I have a desire of dominating the society, the more they have that kind of orientation, the more they are likely to have a view of the world as a competitive dog-eat-dog environment of winners and losers. And you would hear quite a lot of leaders saying, let's compete, let's win, we play to win, we play to win. That's very high social dominance orientation. We actually not necessarily play to win per se, but we play to be the best version of ourselves, right? You don't have to put somebody else down in order to rise above. You don't necessarily have to do that. So languaging where you hear a dog's world, winning, losing, competition, all of that is very fear-based, and it's a need to be able to dominate the environment. It's not a bad thing. I think motivation is important, goals are important, but domination is not necessarily the best thing. You can always win without having to dominate. Yeah.
Okay.
And lastly, definitely revenge. So countries, for example, or companies or teams that have had experiences where they were suppressed themselves. So they were the ones who were suppressed, now feel the need to suppress others, that they become the oppressor as well. And that becomes the reason why it's justified to behave this way. And the ultimate victory for them is not in winning, but in watching hurt caused upon the other.
Ooh, right. Now, just bringing things back into the workplace, is there a way or like a pattern or an MO when it comes to how bullying leaders operate? Like what do they do that clearly indicates that they are bullying someone in the workplace? Like behaviors.
Right. First things first, they tend to communicate in quite an aggressive manner. So immediately you are caught off balance, and being caught off guard means that you don't know how to retaliate. And typically then that means that you would withdraw, unless of course you have also had the training, mental training to be able to dominate in that conversation as well. But majority of the time, people tend to have had these past experiences where if somebody is overly aggressive, they tend to back
Step
away.
back, yeah.
Yeah, you tend to, unless you really have had those, simulated training in the past as well. They also often have a way of pecking at your self-esteem and confidence to the point where you are completely fragile. So this would be in way of criticizing and humiliating you either publicly or privately, enough in small little ways, but perpetual and pervasive enough for you to become quite vulnerable and fragile of sorts from the inner world. And you would see this even if the person has a very huge, large body size, physical body, the inner world could be very delicate, fragile because of the constant criticism and humiliation as well. Yeah. The third thing would be that they manipulate information. So manipulation would be a very, very important part of the game that bullies either play consciously or unconsciously. They withhold resources from you to prevent you or to give you further fear that you may not be able to survive in a situation like this. And they oscillate, right? I think this is the most interesting bit, that they, when they criticize you and humiliate you, they could also oscillate you and lift you up such that you are almost in need of the next high of them lifting you up, and you are willing to bear the putting of yourself down, because you're like, okay, this is also the only person or the very few people in my life who really lift me up. And so I cling on to that, even though there is that whole notion that I'm being put down at the same time as well.
Yeah. Okay. Now, we are going to need to take a quick break for some messages, but when we come back, we get into why bullying continues to exist in this day and age. All that and more happening on Resource Center. Stay tuned, BFM 89.9.
Big Friendly Matcha. BFM 89.9, the business station.
You are listening to Psychology at Work on Resource Center. My name is Audrey Raj, and joining us as usual is organizational psychologist and CEO of OPsych, Hetal Doshi. And on this, our 11th episode, we are discussing bullying leaders. Now, Hetal, before the break, we were talking about how leaders bully in different ways, right? But I have to ask, why is it that we are still dealing with bullying in this day and age? Why does this continue to exist? And some people say, bullying leaders only exist because their followers allow them to continue to bully. And what are your thoughts on this?
I definitely would agree to that as well. And at the same time, I think there are many other reasons why bullying continues to exist. Number one, because the climate and our society glorifies, rewards, supports, and recognizes the achievement of results over and above how these results are achieved. So you probably would have heard, I don't care how you get it done, as long as it's done. Right.
Yeah.
Nobody actually throws a party for a loser, right? Of course, now we are always using that word like failure is, something that is a learning opportunity and all of that. But have we actually really glorified that as much as we glorify the outcome of success? Yeah. And bigger and more powerful is always the thing that is glorified. The outcomes of results also, because I have won and I've achieved something, that in itself has so much of power to give me more power to continue to perpetuate the validity of that behavior, because it's going to give me more. It doesn't give me less, it gives me more. So I'm going to keep doing it. I'm going to keep finding ways of doing it. Also, there is maybe a lack of collective power to shut down some such behaviors. So you could see sometimes that the voice of one is more powerful than the voice of 1,000, 40,000, 50,000, because that one combined, right? That one person combined probably has the wealth of these 40,000, 50,000, 100,000, or their network of that 1% at the top is far more superiorly powerful than the collective power to shut down these behaviors as well. One of the things about shutting down these behaviors will be the next point, which is the consequences of shutting down these behaviors. Most of us would most of us would talk about shutting down these behaviors. I think online you would see, we should do this, we should do that, we should do this, but we probably may not do anything about it, because that could create a direct impact to our own livelihood, our family's livelihood, potential future opportunities. There is a lot to lose in trying to win a war like this as well. As they say, like in war, it's not who wins, but who loses less. And the ones who have more power typically lose less. And also, even if there are consequences, the overall cost benefit of bullying actions are in favor of the benefits, which means that if I am working with somebody who is in power and I'm trying to shut them down versus supporting them would have far more benefits than the benefits of shutting them down as well. So weighing the pros and cons, unfortunately, would mean that let me just go with at least keeping myself safe, if not trying to figure out what I can benefit from this as well.
So what can workers do when they find themselves with a supervisor who is a bully, or they get bosses who instill fear into their workers that do not agree with them or appear not to support them. What do you do then? What are your options?
Yeah, I think also, in saying that, people do experience this stress and inner conflict, when they see these kind of things, because they know there's something wrong, but they tend to use all of their cognitive, their mental resources to figure out how to pacify themselves in a situation like this, and then over a period of time convince themselves that, okay, you know what, maybe this isn't so bad after all, and then they become desensitized. So before you become desensitized in a situation like this, because that's what people will do, they use all of their resources to justify as well to themselves that it's okay, that these kind of situations are okay. Number one, I think, you know, I think everybody should definitely have a lawyer as a friend, okay? Make sure that you have a lawyer as a friend, because ultimately these kind of situations could be legal situations where you really want to safeguard and protect yourself. So I think number one, understand what the what your legal rights are in a situation like this, and all the documents that you need to have in place in order to be able to succeed if and when you want to take this person to task. Because the last thing that you want to do is to act before understanding the outcomes of how you're going to be able to, you want to be able to understand if at the end of the day, my outcome is to be able to win this war. You want to make sure that the processes that you take are right. You don't want to just go head on or be emotional about it and then not know where it's going to lead you, because the consequences can be quite detrimental for you as well. So the other thing would be, if you have enough in you and you find that there is an opportunity to, you can talk to leaders in a non-threatening way, which I don't know whether I myself would do that, because I think when someone's very threatening, talking to them in a non-threatening manner may give them more power to be more threatening. So I'm not sure whether there is an opportunity to do that. However, I have seen cases before where in meetings somebody is a little bit of using bullying, and another person overrides that person in a respectful manner, but to shut that conversation down, and you can see that that's the end of that behavior altogether. So it does work sometimes, and it's a very short, sharp, sweet, cutthroat, immediately there and then and never again. Very powerful way of doing it if you can do it right.
But does that involve an external party stepping in to check that behavior?
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. But what it typically would require would be at least having 1 or 2 or 3 people support you over there as well, to back that up a little bit. Because that person who gets the bully, typically, if they experience something like that, they're going to look left and right to see whether they still have supporters in that environment. So if you have 1 or 2 people next to you to back that up a little bit, that could really pull through. It's one of the best ways to move forward, because it has very little drama. It means you don't have to bring in new people, don't have to bring mediators, moderators. It doesn't have to take like 10 sessions before you get there. So just putting that person in their place immediately when you see that happening could be very, very powerful way of doing it. But you probably just want to be a little bit smart about it and make sure that you have 1 or 2, 3 people backing you up in that scenario as well. I guess a couple of things also would be to be a very no-nonsense person to begin with. As you step into any environment, be somebody who is known to have a reputation that you will not take any kind of nonsense, because it is these small little gaps that people see, and they see these gaps and they're like, okay, this is a person that I can take for a ride a little bit. So be somebody who is, reasonably vocal about not tolerating these kind of behaviors from the start. I think also take a long-term view and try to ignore, try to take a long-term view about certain situations and be very careful as you approach this. So, it could be signals that people are telling you that the person is like that, or experiences that you have with this person. If a long-term view is for you to stay in this particular organization, then you want to strategically find a way to position yourself so that you can be there as well. So I think outcome, strategy, tactics, support, would be, ways that you could use to figure out small victories to keep you going in an environment like this. My also massive recommendation to everybody is that, from what I understand, majority of the clients that we work with anyway are taking these behaviors extremely seriously. Offensive behaviors, sexual behaviors verbal abuse, physical abuse, any kind of, what we call toxic kind of behaviors are taken from my experience anyway in Malaysia, is being taken very seriously. So my recommendation would be to expose these people via confidential whistleblowing channels internally, or
Right.
other, HR compliant channels. Other things that people have done in the past would be to gang up and to go to media directly. That's also an option. I don't necessarily recommend it before you go through internal channels, but the reason why people go to media directly is because their voice gets heard much much faster lah. Yeah, but I do appreciate a lot of organizations taking industrial relation matters extremely carefully these days as well.
Now, Hetal, we're talking about bullying leaders, and we're talking about this obviously because it does affect organizational performance. But maybe you can just give us some examples of how it does. How do bullying leaders impact organizational performance?
Oh yeah, I mean the first thing that's going to happen to you, my dear friends, whoever are thinking that you can get away with it, or is that the first thing that's going to happen in this day and age is that you're going to appear in the news. And nothing could be more exciting than your family reading about your behaviors in the news and you having to justify that. And that's something that some leaders are still okay with. Yeah, they appear in the news every other day and they're still okay with it. But I think majority of us would never want to appear in the news for something like this. The cost of ignoring bullying may also lead you to appearing in courts and experiencing all these, one case after another case. And the interesting thing about it is that I think most of us would know that these days, when you end up having your first expose in the media, you would have a lot of other people who could come on board to say that they agree that you also are bullied. So you get a lot of beautiful surprises along the way as well. Things of the past 10 years, 20 years ago, all these things that are skeletons in the closet that you would have hoped to have kept in there would come out with that as well. Also, according to Gallup, they have estimated that a typical organization has almost about $3,400 loss of productivity for every 10,000 of payroll due to disengaged employees because of these kind of disputes. So what that means is that you're going to get 1/3 of your entire workforce not being productive enough when they hear these kind of stories that are happening in the court case. 1/3 of your workforce are unlikely to want to work as they hear about these court cases going on.
Wow.
I mean, I think most of us know this, right? Like if you're part of an organization and you know that your leaders are appearing in court or media because of their toxic behaviors, you're probably going to be spending 8 hours of your day talking about it rather than actually working. Yeah. So also, you would have people leaving their jobs because of bullying. And lastly, the psychological impact of bullying. So even if you do not get reported, but the psychological impact of being bullied or experiencing bullying causes this level of fear and indirect stress, obviously, to be able to actually participate fully in the purpose of your organization. And so people begin to take a very play it safe approach, which is the exact opposite of what you want in this world of innovation and risk taking and breaking boundaries and putting your heart on your sleeves and going all out to build all kinds of unicorn related products. Yeah, so if that's going on in your organization, most people are going to be taking a very, very play it safe, let me run back home as soon as I can kind of an approach.
Now, Hetal, we've also heard of stories of how maybe people in C-suites or the founders of a company tend to protect these bullying leaders because, well, they're just the high-performing ones. They get the best out of teams, or however they're pushing their teams. So, what can external parties or other stakeholders in a company, shareholders, or like other external parties as well, like your unions, the media, what can they do about workplace abuse like bullying?
Right. Audrey, I think this is one of the things that I've experienced over the past decade, and I've not seen a real decline in it, unfortunately. And that is the promotion of results over behavior, of how you get those results, which means you're prioritizing performance before culture in the organization. And unfortunately, although we talk a lot about culture in the past decade, I'm hearing a lot more of it. But when you look at the KPIs, which one actually has higher weightage? is still performance, unfortunately, for most organizations. So in terms of being a shareholder or board of directors or whatever, one of the things would be to screen to screen your top leaders for something called social dominance orientation, which means that are they taking on these positions because they enjoy dominating, or are they taking on these positions because they have a higher level of purpose to lift up the spirit of sustainable communities of sorts, or sustainable practices that have a much higher value and order for humanity? Or are they doing this out of really I've always wanted to have more money and have power and all of that? So definitely one would be a screening process. Most leaders, if not all, when they get up until CEO positions, they would have had to have personality profiling. So my recommendation would be to definitely consider doing an explicit trait assessment on social dominance orientation. The other thing is also to show how strongly you take this, to show how strongly you take culture and values in your organization over performance, by making a case out of scenarios where leaders have had malpractices. So it's not only about talking about that this is important, but actually taking action and showing that, yes, we actually take action because on leaders who do not, subscribe to our values and behaviors, and it is visibly, action is visibly taken, so that everybody can see that, action has been taken. But without, of course, all of this, as I'm saying it without having to shame the person, because when you start to shame somebody, you're also, you're also using bullying tactics as well, isn't it? And also role modeling behaviors, right? So I hate to say this, but there are board meetings where I've seen board members themselves, shareholders themselves, or board members themselves speaking in a way that doesn't live up to the values that are pinned up on the walls of the organization, and may also have very strong traces of social dominance in them as well. So when you behave in that way, you might be indirectly causing the leaders to feel that, oh, this is a behavior that's acceptable, this is a behavior that's rewarded, this is a behavior that you think I should subscribe to. So really checking your behaviors as well. I think that would be it. And one thing I would definitely recommend is for most people to, this is so left field, but to take part in a lot of meditation or breathing kind of activities, even at a board level, because the pressure is very, very high. And even though you may not want to be bullying, the anger may come across as such, and anger through the pressures that you experience may end up manifesting in bullying kind of behavior. So it may not be that you are a bully, but it's just that the level of pressure and stress that you are experiencing may cause you to behave in that way. So really calming yourselves down through breathing, meditation practices, pacifying something called your amygdala, which is the attack mode that you would have as a mechanism within you, would be a very important thing, I think, for most leaders, because there are a lot who don't even realize that they are behaving in that way at all.
All right. On that note, thank you, Hazel, for taking the time to share these insights with us. For more information on OPSYC and your services, where can our listeners go?
Please look out for me on LinkedIn. My name is Hetal Doshi, Hetal Doshi, Doshi. Thank you to those of you who've been reaching out. Pretty much once the podcast is out, I'll hear it from so many of you. Or you could just get in touch with us via our website, which is www.o-psych.com.
And if you missed out on any part of this show, you can go look for the podcast on our website. That's bfm.my. You can also look for all our podcasts on the BFM app that's available on the Apple App Store and on Google Play. Hetal will be back again same time, the first Tuesday of May. But till then, on behalf of Hetal Doshi, organizational psychologist and CEO of OPSYC, and myself, Audrey Raj, this has been Psychology at Work on Resource Center, BFM 89.9.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. To find more great interviews, go to bfm.my or find us on iTunes. BFM 89.9, the business station.